Hi, my name's Jim. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Denise, for inviting me to speak to the famous Worcester Saturday morning meeting. And I mean that. I've heard about I live in Boston, on Brockton, but I heard about this meeting more than a few times, that it's a meeting worth getting up and traveling to. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come and share my experience, strength, and hope. Done the work out of the book through the grace of God, helping me through a sponsor, and people like you in these halls and this literature to qualify to speak. I started young at like 12 years old in the 70s, and at that age, I came from an environment where it was the 60s and it was in Boston, and I'm Irish Catholic, and it seemed like everyone in my life that was a mentor or an adult was drinking. And that observation was correct, because it seems like in the end, most of those people turned out to be alcoholic once I realized what an alcoholic was. Although I'd heard that word talked about a lot. I heard my mother calling my father, "You're an alcoholic," all my life, you know what I mean? And there would always be fights about that, and the fact that, as long as I provide for the family, I can drink, so forth, the old excuses. But it seemed like I heard that, and I heard that kind of echo coming from my uncles talking about their family lives, and my cousins and how they fought, whatever. I heard the word alcoholism a lot, and it just didn't matter to me. I was a child. I heard a lot of fighting, but it just kind of went over my head. And then I grew up to the age of 13, and I discovered the drink and fell in love with it right away. I mean, that first night in the woods in my freshman year in high school, it was like, man, this is amazing. How come I hadn't found out about this earlier? And, and as a child, though, listening to my mother yell at my father and the chaos that was going on in the house, and there was a lot of crying, I was saying, I will never do that. I will never drink, ever. The pain it caused, and I thought it was personal. I thought my father just chose booze over me. He loved it better. He was willing to bring on the chaos. With all that knowledge, the minute I got a taste, all that thinking went right out the window, because I felt ease and comfort in a way I'd never found. And immediately it's like, I got to do this again. Even though I was throwing up, in the woods after my pint of Boone's Farm, it really was like, that's just a small price to pay. So I have to throw up, and then I'll go back and drink again, but I feel great. And that went on for a while. And eventually I grew up to where I got out of high school and did a lot of drinking in that period, so much so that I had to go into the service to get my head together. But at that time, going into the military was not the best place to go if you're an alcoholic, because wherever I went, if there was an American flag, there was a bar pretty close by. I was in countries where there was no alcohol allowed, but if you went to the embassy, the U.S. Embassy, the Marines always had a great bar. So I never found trouble getting the drink. So in the end, I got out of the service. I picked up where I'd left off. I was still drinking heavily. I found a woman that loved doing what I was doing, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and let's go. And it was great. It was no responsibilities, just her and me, and just rolling with it. And I was drinking alcoholically. I was just drinking the way everyone around me drank. That's all. I mean, in my eyes, the whole city of Boston was alcoholic at that time. And I know that's not true, but I grew up in neighborhoods where there was a lot of it, and that just didn't bother me. Like, yeah, I'm functioning, I'm showing up, I'm doing this, I'm having a good time, and I'm not causing any problems. So, just to get my head together here. So anyways, I continued to drink and all of that, and I had no problem with, as I said, being an alcoholic. I just assumed as long as I show up and do what my dad did, pay the bills, I'm okay. And so life went on, and then I stopped drinking for a period of time without going to AA. I stopped for 11 years. So I can relate to the copper slipper guy. I remember sitting there with my wife going out to dinner, and we started doing socializing in the area. You know, the kids started playing t-ball and all that. You get together with the parents, going over for barbecues and this and that, and they'd be all kind of getting it on. They'd have some drinking, and I'd be sitting there bored out of my mind looking at these amateurs. I'd have resentment towards them all, like, what a bunch of losers. This isn't how you drink, blah, 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 you know, and a typical contempt. And so, you know, I could tell I was getting agitated. I didn't realize it then. But I mentioned it to my wife. I said, you know, I don't want to go to these parties anymore. They're boring me. She could drink and put it down as easy as anything. And she turned to me and said, well, you've stopped drinking. You have obviously got this under control. You can drink. I was like, really? And she goes, yeah. I ordered a beer right there after 11 years. But through that 11 years, I had not joined AA. And I mean, I'd gone to AA for a little bit. But anyways, the story goes, I picked up immediately. We'd been married for 17 years, and within 3 months I was back to the way I was. You know, for the first couple of months I was just drinking on the weekends. We'd go out to dinner and so forth. And eventually I just started going back to the old neighborhood. And it just, in the end, within like 6 months, I was out of the house. So here I was, 11 years later, thought I had it together, and as soon as I got the green light, I picked up, and within a matter of time, my whole life blew up. I lost my family, lost my wife, lost my home, lost my business, and I still felt like I'm okay. You know, I was tremendously upset the fact that I wasn't living in my home anymore. But at the same time, I felt ease and comfort again. I didn't realize, you know, I wasn't experiencing that when I was sober. My life became, you know, together. Anyways, I still didn't think my life was unmanageable, put it that way. I'm just trying to qualify my thinking. I lost all of that. And now I'm under the lash again for the drink, because just because she left me, it didn't say, oh, I'm putting it right back down. No, it's on. Now I have to fight the beast. You know, and it never went away. As it talks about a real alcoholic, it never goes away. If it does, maybe you're blessed. But for me, it didn't go away. I was just locked into the compulsion. So, but I still didn't think my life was unmanageable. And then I met a woman, after I got broomed out of the house, I met a woman who was just like my wife before I married her. She loved to drink and party and all of that. So I immediately kind of moved in with her. And it was even better than the other. She had a Mercedes, she had a nice house, she lived on the water, all this. And her husband was divorcing her because she drank too much alcohol. It was beautiful. You know what I mean? And he had to leave the house. It was perfect. You know, anyways. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm an alcoholic. I've always accepted that, but I still thought my life was manageable. And so one night, I went over there for New Year's Eve. I stayed the night, but I had to get up early because her kids were coming over to visit, so she had to get up and clean up. So I had to get up, of course, and left. And that was about, 7 a.m., and she lived over on the north side of Boston, and I was driving through Revere, down Revere Beach, and it's a snowy, gray, totally gray winter day, New Year's Day, and I saw a bar was open. And I went into this bar, and he'd opened it up to clean it up, and there was nothing but bottles broken all over the floor from the night before, and there was like 2 other guys in the bar, and we were all separated. It was very depressing. It was like the Homer Simpson scene, you know, where they all sit at the bar, and they're like, you know, nobody's talking. So I sit down there, and my hands are shaking and all of that, and the bartender comes over to give me a beer because he's out sweeping the glass. He comes back and hands me a beer, and he looks up and down the bar, and he says, now these are the real alcoholics. And that really freaked me out. I look down, I look at these other 2 losers, you know. I'm above them. You know how we are. And it dawned on me. It's like, dude, your life is totally out of control. I'd lost my family, lost my business, lost my residence, was living with my alcoholic father back in Hyde Park, and I still thought I had it together. But in that moment, God gave me that clarity to say, your life's upside down, and you are going down hard. And everything changed. I went from like this blissful ignorance, even though I'd lost everything, to where like I knew my life was not going to I wasn't going to make it. So at that moment I realized I'm an alcoholic and my life is unmanageable. I didn't think of it in that way, but I just knew my life was upside down. But it took so much because of my pride and my fear, because I didn't know how to deal with life. I knew this much. If I wasn't drunk or buzzed, I was uncomfortable. You know, I could do the math. I didn't have to go to AA to understand that. I was only comfortable when I had booze in front of me, and I had a lot of it in the corner, so I didn't have to worry. You know what I mean? The stash was as important as drinking. Because if I had the stash, it was like, no matter what, I'm in control. But if I don't, it's like, man, you know, we know what that's about. So I went about that thinking for a while, and then I said I'd been in AA a little bit, and it's weird. So I went back to that lady's house a couple days later, and long story short, she turns to me and she says, you know, my husband says I'm an alcoholic. And I turned to her and said, you are? And she says, what do you mean? I said, well, we're both alcoholics. We don't do anything without the vodka bottle being in front of us. You know, we go to the kitchen, there's vodka there. We go to the bedroom, the vodka comes with us. We go here, the vodka. We never go without, where's the vodka? You know what I mean? It was like that. So I knew, and she asked me, how do you know this? I said, well, I go to AA. And she goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And so what do they do there? I explained it, you know, somebody talks, they clap, they sit down, and it goes on like that. And then, you know, okay, so 2 days later, she says, will you take me to that meeting? Or will you take me to an AA meeting? Like, sure. So we went to the meeting, and it was like going to the movies. You know, we sat there, listened, got up, and went drinking. I mean, it was like going to the movies. We went out drinking. And it was like, see, I told you, that's just what it is. She was okay. So then the next night, we did it again. We did this for like 5 nights in a row. We went out, went to a meeting, and then went drinking. And then one night, I said, how about we don't drink tonight? And she goes, I guess, okay. So we didn't drink. And we did that for about 5 nights. And after that, she said, I'm drinking tonight. And I said, I'm not. And I haven't drank since. And that's 25 years ago. She was an angel. But she just reminded me of the solution, because by coming back into the halls, I had realized this is where it's at. But I still didn't get it. So I split up with her, I moved back to Hyde Park, and my shrink said to me, and then I want to commit suicide. So my shrink says to me, you should go to a meeting. And I'd been to you know, this is the bizarre thing. I'd been to a lot of meetings, and it didn't even dawn on me that after that I should go to a meeting. I stopped going to meetings when I broke up with her. I just isolated. But I want to kill myself. I actually called her on the phone when I was on a bridge, asking her to give me the motivation to run far enough away so I'll have the launch ability to go over the railing. You know, I'm asking her, can you give me some advice on how to kill myself? And she's like, you got to go to a meeting. So I went to a meeting that night, and I heard a guy mention Miss Hope here. And so that was the beginning. Over the course of that time, I still didn't get the unmanageability part out of me. Even though in that moment I was locked into the fact that I cannot do this on my own. Self-reliance had failed me. I didn't understand that quote, but I knew I'm not able to stop on my own. And due to that, my life is very unmanageable. And that still is the hardest thing. I have no problem saying I'm an alcoholic. I have a hard time saying I can't do good in the world by myself. You know, I can't. It's a real, I don't know if it's being a male or something, but I was always told never to surrender growing up. You know what I mean? It's just in the DNA that boys hear growing up. And so it's a hard thing. And like I said, all my mentors, all my aunts, my uncles, not my aunts, but my uncles were all alkies. It seemed like all the parents, the fathers of the kids I knew, everyone drank heavily. So much so that I remember drinking at 14 years old down in the basement of an apartment house in the wintertime. And the father, there's some kid who lived in the apartment house, we're down where the furnace is, and we're drinking, and he comes down and puts something in the barrel, and he looks around and he says, where's Charlie? I mean, he knew we're all there underage, whatever. And Charlie doesn't drink, he goes, what's wrong with that kid? So right away, we're automatically thinking, yeah, if you don't drink, you're a weirdo. You know what I mean? Well, keep your eye on that guy. And So everybody drank. You know, as I said, it just seemed like the culture. If you don't drink, you should be ostracized or never trusted. And so I just thought that that was okay. The word alcoholic was just a word, but the unmanageability was hard to deal with because all the alkies I knew, they would defend it, saying, I show up for work, I provide, and this is all that matters. I have the right to drink. I have the right to drink, but I can't drink. You know, that's the thing about this. We have free will. That's the only thing I have to do in this program, really, is to admit that I'm powerless and I need a higher power. It says right at the end, it's a spiritual solution leading into the next step. Only a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. It's all leading into the next one. You can't jump around in the steps. Yeah, they all formulate into where the next one picks up where the last one left off. So, I had to rearrange my life. I had to blow up my thinking, as it talks about in the book. You know, some things I had to throw out the window. Lifelong conceptions. They had to be gone. Which was not easy. I mean, we can say, oh yeah, I'm ready to do that. It's like doing step 7. I get this. And then we realized, I got to get rid of all my binkies. You know what I mean? I'm not drinking, but I got a lot of other things I count on, like food that I love, and sex, and maybe work, whatever indulgence it is. It's never in moderation usually. When I leave the drink, I'm going to go to something else and go all in on that. And so that wasn't easy for me to do step 7. At the same time, it wasn't easy to do this pivoting in my brain until I went to God. You know, that was it. It helps to be destroyed. I remember my sponsor told me that when I told him all the stuff I'd gone through, he was like, oh, this is going to be great. I was like, what's wrong with you? You know, he said, because the more you're broken, the more this takes. If you're still on the fence, I feel bad for you, because it's a bad place to be. If you still think you got one in you. I was there for a long time. But once I got to the point of seeing that I had no hope of getting my life together on my own, I embraced a whole new life to where I pray now. I realized the power of prayer through the steps. I know when I invite God into my life that I will be okay. So much so that now I feel as if, I described this to a sponsee recently, I thought, that's a pretty good analogy, where if I'm at a carnival and I want to get on the roller coaster, and the 17-year-old kid who's buckling me in forgets me, and goes to the next car and doesn't buckle me in, I'm like, hey kid, we're not moving. I'm having that seatbelt. That's the same way I feel like now when I get out of bed. I do not want to take a step without going to God. Just to turn my will over, right out of the gate, because I feel insecure now if I don't have God in my life. Because I know in my bones, through a good fourth step, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was in my fourth step that I saw that my life was really unmanageable. And you know how I saw that? It wasn't the problems I put down, it was the solutions. My solutions caused more problems than the original problem. You know, I mean, really. And, you know, I'm the type of guy, if I have a leaky pipe in my house, I'll say, well, I'm not a plumber. What am I going to do? I'll burn my house down. You know what I mean? That makes sense. Took care of that problem. You know, Jimmy, how'd that pipe work out? No problem. Can I stay over at your house tonight? You know what I mean? Because I have nowhere to go. And some people, that would make sense. Like, yeah, that was a good move. Other people, they're appalled. But that's an exaggeration, but it's just what it's about for me. I've come to the conclusion, without a doubt, in my bones, that I need my higher power. It's victory from surrender. That's all it is. Totally against our nature. But once we come to the conclusion that we're powerless to stop drinking, and due to that fact, it has caused our lives to be unmanageable, due to our own best thinking, and only a power greater than me will provide me the opportunity to overcome that, that's when things changed. And this is the beginning. For anybody who's new here, this is the beginning. I hope you're destroyed. If this is your first meeting, I hope you just crawled out of a dumpster. You know what I mean? And that you are tired because you found a place to not have to go back to that dumpster. You found a place with peace and hope is alive. And that's all I got. Thanks.